affairs, politics, opinions, and discussion. This is The Issue on your TV. I'm Mark Carr, and on this edition of The Issue, we'll be discussing mental health with Kevin Flynn and Michele Sparling. But first, I'd like to introduce my co-host this week, Wendy Rinella, CEO of the Oakville Community Foundation. Wendy, how are you coping with COVID?
Yeah, we're in our third lockdown, aren't we, Mark? And once again, we're confined to our household and told not to travel. So it's becoming even more of a challenge for those of us, isn't it? So I'm going to begin.
It certainly is.
So I'm going to begin by acknowledging that Oakville resides on the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe. And the Anishinaabe are the treaty holders within Oakville. They are represented by the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and Oakville resides on treaties 14 and 22. And just before we get into our topic, I just wanted to also recognize the great support that we receive from the Cogeco team, who are in studio working away in support of us. So thank you to the great Cogeco team. With respect to the topic today, it kind of leads from this lockdown that we're all experiencing. Mental health has become a very important issue that is being discussed, particularly as a number of people are being confined to their own homes. We have adult orphans who are lonely. We have, this is probably the greatest time ever that Canadians live alone than they have historically. So these are very challenging times for mental health. And what we've witnessed within the philanthropy sector is individuals taking initiative, developing their own mental health solutions, raising funds, and bringing them to the fore. And we have two such champions with us today. It is my intense pleasure to introduce you to both Michele Sparling and Kevin Flynn. Michele has been a champion and advocate for youth mental health for 15 to 20 years, I believe. She is currently the chair of the board of directors of the Canadian Mental Health Association. She is a member of the province's advisory committee on mental health. She's part of the local Ontario health team in terms of advising on mental health. I could read her whole bio, but then the program would be over. What she has done locally, which is very exciting, is she funds a program called Just Be You for mental health. And she also raises funds through an initiative called Shine Out, Shout Out, which she will hopefully share with us today. And the other person who is joining us is Kevin Flynn, who should not be a stranger to too many people on the issue because he was an elected politician for 33 years. And his advocacy of mental health extends even before the Bell Let's Talk series. He led the standing committee, all-party standing committee on mental health and addictions starting in February of 2009. He has introduced legislation as Minister of Health to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder for frontline workers. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce both of them. I'm going to ask Michele first to share some of the background of her initiative in terms of Just Be You and Shine In, Shout Out. Michele?
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Wendy. And thank you for having me here today. This is greatly appreciated to be able to tell our story. And our initiative, like so many in this field, came from family, and having a family issue related to mental illness and seeing the gap that was there. And in particular, at the time in the youth mental health field, what we saw was a gap related to youth and not having a safe place to go, to hang out, to have fun. And when I had the privilege when I was working with Parents for Children's Mental Health as a volunteer, to talk to parents across the province and to talk to youth. And what we heard from them is having that safe place, having a place to go where they could just be themselves, so they could just hang out and make some friends, because that isolation that so often happens with mental health became problematic, for both the families and for the youth. So I did my research, found that there was nothing around in the community, met with a number of our community representatives, including Kevin at the time, and asked about, what we could do to make this happen. And we started I'm a Nova Scotianer by trade, so I did the thing that I normally would do, call people to gather around my kitchen table, and have a conversation. In this case, it was my hockey team. And we decided that we would do a fundraiser called Shine Out, Shout Out. And Shine Out, Shout Out is an event that we hold every year, except during COVID, obviously, related where we hold an adult recreational hockey tournament. And the tournament first happened in 2013. We put it together over 4 months. And in that first tournament, we raised $30,000. And since then, we've raised almost $350,000 in terms of supporting it. We then took that money. We went to our local United Way and said, I'd like to meet with all the people who do, mental health work for youth and see what we could put together. And they said, sure, you could do that. They pulled people together with us. We said, we have this idea. And the idea is to create a peer support group, because we knew that peer support has significant advantages because it can have more meaningful impact for people at times, even beyond therapy. And so they came together. They thought this is a great idea. Like most places, the issue was around funding and who was going to pay for it. So we, nicely said, we will pay for it. We'll give that opportunity. And we ended up with a great steering group around us. It started with CMHA running the program. It's since 2014 has been run by Support House. And this group meets every Friday night in Oakville, every Thursday night in Halton Hills, and gives support to a group of youth anywhere from, the Oakville one could be anywhere from 15 up to, we've had as many as 35 kids on a Friday night who get together, and ages 15 to 25 to get that peer support. So it's been running for, like I said, 7 years. It's had great significance, great impact that we're seeing. And, it's been heartwarming to hear the stories that have come out of this. And like I said, again, it started because of a grassroots initiative that said, we've got a gap.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Michele. Kevin, will you share with us the Kevin Flynn Mental Health Foundation?
Yeah, it was really, it was quite flattering, actually. When I left politics, some people approached me and said, you've done a lot of work on mental health. You've done a little bit more. You had a higher profile in the mental health field than most politicians. We think you've done some pretty good direct things. Why don't we try and keep that going? And they said, so we'd like to start a foundation in your name, and we'd like to know what you would, what you would like the money's used for, what you think is the best use of the money that we're going to raise. And when I think back over the exposure I had to the mental wellness and the mental health issue over the years, it struck me that it was a growing problem. It struck me that it was getting to be a more comfortable conversation than it had been in the past. There used to be a stigma around mental health, and there still is today, I think, to some extent. But people are talking about it, that's for sure. But I sensed, as I was chairing the select committee, that we were dealing with a problem that was growing. It wasn't just recognition, it wasn't just identification. There was actually more young people dealing with mental health issues in a way they didn't seem to have to in the past. It struck me that while everybody else was focusing on treatment, on doing the more immediate things, and I think in a lot of respects, sometimes I feel like we've all got fingers in the dike, trying to plug holes in the system. I thought somebody should be looking over the top of the dike and saying, where the heck is all this water coming from? And that's what I'm thinking of in mental health, is that I imagine a young person standing in the doctor's office or in a counselor's office or just talking to their parents and saying, something's not right, something's changed. I think maybe I need to see somebody, I should talk to somebody. And I think, did that young person have to be in that situation? Is there anything we could have done in their life? Is there anything that happened in their life? Is there anything that would have changed that, would have led to them not standing in that office? And I don't know if it's food, if it's diet, if it's environmental. I don't know. I know I've got a good friend of mine, Dr. Bill Howard, who writes for the Globe and writes a number of books, and he's focusing on loneliness right now. And it's, so there's a number of things I still don't think we understand. We know we've got a need. We know we've got people talking about mental illness in a way they haven't in the past. But there's a variety of opinions as to where it all begins. Where does it all start? Why does it affect some children and not others? And is there anything we should be doing more of? Or perhaps is there something we should be doing less of? So I'd really like to focus on the research end of things. So when the folks approached me with that idea, I thought, that for a smaller foundation, obviously we're just starting. Um, we're kind of swinging for the fences here. We're hoping we're going to hit a home run. We're going to fund research that perhaps wouldn't have been done otherwise, and that research is going to lead us down a road perhaps we haven't been down before towards a solution.
If I can ask, I'll put the question to you first, Michele. Mental health spans everything from mild to severe. Where does the gap exist that you are filling?
For me, where the gap exists, it is actually, in our case, it is from mild to severe, because we don't limit as to who can participate in the program, because sometimes it's that young person who's not yet identified with an illness, who is just feeling overwhelmed, is feeling stressed, and just needs a place to go and hang out and to be with other people. So we actually provide that space there. We provide that space for people who are maybe in treatment and need a little support around it. And we also provide that support for people who are post-treatment to be able to have continue with their skills and with their coping strategies that they have. So for us, other than somebody who may be extremely severe, and if I'm looking at it from a level of acuity, is needing more supports than we could give. Ours is that very much that say before, during, and after care program that we give. So, but if you're looking at somebody, like I said, who needs hospitalization, somebody who needs, residential care, clearly that's not us. So we are, below that, but we provide the support around that.
Okay, and Kevin, your foundation is obviously zeroed in on research. So obviously you found the gap that existed in our current system.
Well, I think I've kind of adopted things I've learned in politics throughout my life. And the one I think is in physical health. We came to the realization that it's better to prevent people from getting sick than it is to treat them after they're sick. For my time as Minister of Labor, it's better to prevent occupational injuries, injuries, illnesses, rather than treat somebody really well after they've been injured at work. Is there a way to prevent it? And I think that will be the focus of the foundation's research efforts. And we won't be doing the research ourselves. We're going to facilitate that research. We're going to help fund it. We want the research to be picked by an expert panel, but we really want to focus on the prevention. We really want to understand where this all starts. Where does it all come from? And I think by doing that, it's not going to have near the immediate impact that programs like Michele is having. And I've seen her programs. They're fantastic. I used to drop the puck at the Shine Out tournament. And certainly I paid a few visits to the Just Be Me. And I met some of the kids up there. That's helping people today. That's helping people right now as we speak. That's helping people tomorrow, and it helped people yesterday. Our foundation has a much more far-reaching goal, and that is to try to prevent people from needing those services in the first place somehow. If we can unlock some secrets we haven't figured out yet by funding the right research, I think it's a good combination of things. The things that Michele is doing now is helping people that need that help right now. We're hoping to prevent that need from getting greater.
That's a very ambitious goal, and I know that you're up to the task. You have to go in with a lot of inspiration to launch these types of initiatives. But as we turn our faces, in this time of our third lockdown, I'm just curious to you, Michele, in particular, as well as Kevin, where are you seeing gaps emerging now? I mean, a lot of the programming that you set up 7 years ago, obviously is still needed, but as someone who's sitting with frontline organizations now during COVID, are you seeing greater gaps opening up. Is there anything that you can share with us where the public should be focusing their attention on?
There are gaps, and the gaps are getting greater, and a lot of it is on the demand. The demand is increasing, and we just don't have the capacity of services. There's some great initiatives that have been provided that we see from the government related to virtual care, in terms of being able to access, there's psychotherapy through the Kids Helpline, which is a fantastic organization. But it doesn't meet, like, we had wait lists before, and we still continue to have wait lists. And if somebody asks me today, what we need in terms of mental health, I have my usual spiel these days that says, well, we need an integrated program of care for, it has step care models. We need a comprehensive strategy that, goes across all levels of health. We need sustained funding, that we have in there. We need co-design by the voices of those with lived experience and families and caregivers, and we don't see that. We're not seeing that. There's nothing that's bringing that together. So there's that piece of it. That's a bigger piece. And then locally, it is the local programs that they are struggling to, have with the funds to be able to provide the services. In particular, there's a lot of work being done at that lower level, somebody's starting to struggle with their depression or anxiety, or somebody who may just be feeling overwhelmed or stressed. We're not seeing the funding in the higher needs in terms of those more excessive, more demanding or more chronic, or more complex mental health.
And for you, Kevin, in terms of research, where do you see the gaps that are currently within the research that you would see your foundation filling? Because I'm assuming like CMHA and other medical organizations and foundations are actually funding research. So I'm just curious as to, are you targeting any special area of research?
I'm just convinced, Wendy, that we've missed something, or there's something right below our noses that we choose to not pay attention to. I kind of think in analogies, and I think somewhere in the 1930s or 40s, some brave doctor stood up before an audience of smoking doctors and said, you know what, this tobacco may not be good for us, and probably got laughed out of the room. We're kind of looking for that. What's the missing ingredient? What's driving this? Why did kids deal with this in the 1800s? Did they deal with it in the 1200s? Or is this something that just our generation and the generation before perhaps has just had to deal with in a meaningful way? Do we understand it? Are we asking the right questions? Certainly, I think people are making huge strides in treatment. But at the end of the day, I think it really is looking at those things that maybe today don't seem to be the things you should look at, but in the fullness of time, you think, how did we miss that? Why didn't we look at that? So we're, as I said, we're a small foundation, and we are going to look at the places perhaps other foundations wouldn't look at.
Well, Kevin, when you were at Queen's Park, you tabled a motion to make Ontario the first province to endorse a national standard for psychological safety in the workplace, developed by the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And I'm wondering how that initiative fits into your foundation moving forward.
Well, I think quite often you get into emotional discussions when you get into to mental illness, when you get into mental health, and I think that's just perfectly, it's perfectly natural. But there's a great business case for good mental wellness. The companies that adopt the psychological standard for mental health in Canada, they're very profitable companies. They're very successful companies. They're companies that people really want to work for. So often when you're dealing with a governmental issue, your first thought is, oh my God, this is going to cost us a lot of money. And yet companies that have invested in the workplace, I think are seeing the benefits of that. And that certainly is a message that I wanted to get out to the business community. Bell Canada, for example, adopted it in a big way, and I think has made tremendous strides in that. But the psychological issues, mental health, mental wellness, doesn't end at home. So whatever you're dealing with at home, with your friends, with your buddies or whatever, you take that to work with you. And smart employers understand that, I think.
I guess my final question, if we still have time, is these are great initiatives that both you and Kevin and Michele have put together. And how does the public get involved in supporting you and your initiatives? What type of events are you having coming up, and how can people get involved? Michele, did you want to start?
Absolutely. Well, we, similar to Kevin, we created a fund or foundation through the Oakville Community Foundation to ensure that we had, funds that are going in there from other places. So we do have a Just Be You fund there. It's COVID dependent. We don't know whether we'll be having Shine Out Shout Out this year. So we're asking people just to keep look at our Instagram, under Shine Shout, on our Twitter and our Facebook pages and our website, which is shineshout.com, to be able to see what we're doing and what we're up to. And as an HR person, I got to say, I agree 100% with what Kevin has said. I've seen that in my own career, as to what companies have done in terms of putting psychological standards in place. So agree 100% there.
Kevin, do you have some initiatives where the public can get involved?
Yeah, we're very new. We're a fledgling foundation, and
Well,
COVID has made us look in corners that we perhaps wouldn't ordinarily have looked in. A few of my clients are in the field of virtual reality, and all of a sudden it's taken on a whole, online virtual reality, augmented reality have become things that perhaps we wouldn't have adopted that quickly had not COVID hit. So if there is any bright shining light to the COVID issue, it perhaps has made us start to look at things a little differently. So we're having a virtual night of comedy as our kind of kickoff event, and some very well-known comedians from the Hollywood circuit and some musicians will be joining us on April 22nd for a night of, we're calling it Comedy and Cocktails. So obviously we're not supplying the cocktails. You'll be supplying your own cocktails or your non-alcoholic drinks or whatever your beverage of choice is. But we're going to be supplying the comedians, and we're asking people if they would sign up. You can get more information at the Kevin Flynn Mental Health Foundation website or Oakville Community Foundation website. We're hoping to follow that up with Canada's first virtual reality golf tournament. So you'll be able to play around a golf with your friends from around the world while you're standing in your own office, where you don't have to leave home, you don't have to leave the office. You can play around a golf and not even, not even, I'm not sure what I should say next, other than you're not leaving home to play around a golf, and it's a whole new thing for me. So anyway, the idea is to get over the COVID thing somehow and raise some money.
Terrific.
Well, Kevin, I have to ask you, with this comedy night, as a former politician, you aren't bringing on politicians, because they are quite funny.
You know what? I've thought about this a little bit, Mark. One of the great things about being in politics is you get to make a difference. You get to change things. One of the bad things is you got to hang out with politicians for a long period of time. And when you leave and you look back, you think, some of those people I wouldn't have chosen to hang out with in my normal life, but I kind of had to. But you know, these people, I'm sure, will have the odd political joke here and there, but I don't know what. I don't get to set the program. But it seems like you can't have a comedy show these days without referring to politics somewhere.
You see, and I thought it was going to be a political roast of Kevin Flynn, so I was really disappointed.
That would take far too much time, Wendy.
Well, it might raise a lot of money.
Absolutely.
I do have one follow-up question for Michele in particular, and I'm just wondering, where do you see some hope on the horizon? You've talked about all the challenges ahead in the system. Can we end on a positive message of hope?
Absolutely. I think the positive message of hope is that, as Kevin started off the conversation with, is that there's a lot more conversation happening and people are asking the right questions. And in particular, we're seeing it in the youth. they were seeing them ask the right questions and getting involved and being more open about where they are with their mental health. And, when identifying when they have needs, they're more likely to talk to themselves. We're also seeing more work being done upstream, where we're seeing, when kids are, going to doctor's offices and asking the questions then about their mental health. We never used to ask that. We'd ask about physical health, and we're seeing it coming through the school systems as part of the curriculum. So the more conversations we have around that, we ended up, with young people who become adults who are still now being able to manage their mental health. So I think there is hope there, that we will get there at the end of this, and hope because organizations like Kevin's, like what we're doing, there's a lot of people who support us. So I think that's a lot of sign of hope.
Terrific. Well, thank you.
Well, I'd like to take a couple of moments and thank Michele Sparling and Kevin Flynn for helping us to better understand where their foundations and groups are going in regard to mental health. I'd also like to thank Wendy Rinella, CEO of the Oakville Community Foundation, and to Tina McEwen, who joins The Issue and Your TV as our newest producer. Welcome, Tina, and thanks for helping out today. I'm Mark Carr, and you can watch The Issue Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. with repeats throughout the week on Your TV. Truly local. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Good night.